morning. Welcome to the Pearl Report. I'm Diana Lin. The Philippines is still reeling from the horrendous devastation of Typhoon Haiyan last month. Many scientists have linked the superstorm to global warming. Producer Renato Reyes examines why experts say it's time Hong Kong starts preparing for the full onslaught of climate change.
Yeah, on November 8, we had this super typhoon which hit the Philippines, particularly the central part of the Philippines. Waters developed to big waves around 20 feet.
This is my father-in-law, and he's still missing until now, and we are searching for the body. And this is my son Schwartz. This is all we have for now.
The casualties run through about 5,000.
I have lost everything, the house.
Displacement of people was really huge.
It's the worst thing we've ever seen.
And experts say climate change is aggravating the frequency and intensity of severe storms like Haiyan.
Of course, we're not entirely sure. The science of climatology is very complex. But I think we have to be prepared for more typhoons and typhoons that will cause more damage. We are on a typhoon track and we are surrounded by sea.
But can Hong Kong take on the super typhoons of the future? Typhoon Haiyan is the strongest to hit Hong Kong in 29 years. The typhoon whipped up a storm surge of 1.4 meters at Tai O, one of the biggest in Hong Kong history.
Hong Kong will normally have a storm surge of about less than 1 meter or under the extreme cases of 1.4 to 1.7 meters of storm surge.
This is Hong Kong's first line of defense.
The most common type of sea defense structures in Hong Kong is the seawall, breakwaters, and typhoon shelters.
Officials consider them adequate to protect the city except for one fundamental flaw. Its design doesn't factor in what is now making storm surges bigger and bigger. Rising sea level.
The sea level has risen in Victoria Harbour, and the rate of rise is about 29 millimeters per decade.
The climate is projected to get warmer by 2 to 4 degrees Celsius in the next 100 years. The hotter it gets, the more glaciers melt and waters warm up and expand, the higher the planet's sea level.
With an elevated sea level, the threat of storm surges will increase, and so Hong Kong is vulnerable.
Last year, the government started reviewing Hong Kong's maritime defense. A study this year by its consultants shows Hong Kong and Kowloon's coastal frontages, as well as its northwest side, are vulnerable to flooding if sea level rises 1 meter, along with a 1 meter storm surge in high tide. The design of coastal structures will depend on projections for sea level and other data in the next 100 years.
Only after carrying out these studies can we determine what coastal structures in which areas we have to defend against climate change.
Climate change is now inevitable. How do we adapt to the inevitable consequences of climate change in the future?
The adaptation takes the view of a constant awareness.
His job is to update every year the risks climate change poses to the MTR.
We're looking at higher storm surges, more rainfall falling in a shorter period.
The MTR runs along slopes, through tunnels, goes underground, and near water.
The worst case for the MTR would be flooding, similar to what had happened for the New York City Transit Authority due to Hurricane Sandy. That kind of closure in Hong Kong would be unacceptable. But we make sure that the drains, the pumps are all in working order.
As well as drains and slopes along MTR tracks.
We make sure that there's nothing blocking them as well.
Because of threats of landslides. Typhoon Haiyan precipitated 38 landslides,
which closed the expressway but didn't impact the railway. So if it's happened once, it could potentially happen again along the North Lantau Expressway.
An average 2,400 millimeters of rain fall on Hong Kong a year. As the planet gets hotter, more water from oceans evaporate and goes up the atmosphere and turns to rainfall.
This is the record of hourly rainfall at the Hong Kong Observatory. You can see that this record is broken more frequently in recent decades.
We're looking at how is that going to impact our business.
Shirley Elgaya, Chief Sustainability Officer for Gammon, a construction company that does 70 projects a year in the city.
Prolonged periods of it can slow down construction, such as in June of 2008. And it was like raining almost 45 days straight in Hong Kong. And that did slow down some production.
Especially the most weather-dependent phase, concreting.
It's very difficult to make concrete move. Now, the traditional technology has been to use external compaction, something called vibrator.
Gammon has turned to technology for solution, smart concrete. It requires no vibration to settle, flows farther, and needs 40% less manpower to lay down. Special chemicals mixed in cement makes the particles push away from each other.
Take Shanghai Towers, the tallest building being built in Shanghai right now. It had a foundation almost the size of a football field. They had to place 60,000 cubic meters of concrete in one day, 10,000 trucks of concrete.
But global warming's biggest impact on construction companies is the hot spells projected to scorch Hong Kong, especially those up on heights and on the ground.
We do everything.
Cam has been a construction worker for 10 years.
I work on high places less. I work more on the ground. When it's hot, of course, you feel tired easily. Your working ability diminishes.
Our annual temperature is also rising. In the last 130 years, the rise is about 1.5 degrees Celsius.
A recent study by the Construction Industry Council shows more accidents among workers occur in summer months between June and August.
Over 50%. In 2013, for the industry, between January and June, there were 3 fatalities. When you look at July, there were 5.
Hot spells could lead to fatigue, fainting, and heat stroke.
Then that leads to other accidents. They can drop things, back injuries, muscle injuries, or just a loss of awareness, so that you might get more bumping into things.
The company now mandates rest breaks for workers during hot spells and provides shelter for them to hydrate, as well as nurses on site.
Every single week, maybe we go out for like 4 to 5 days to visit different sites.
More vulnerable than al fresco workers are people most sensitive to heat. Lam Big Ping, 78, suffers from high blood pressure.
I call the alarm service to ask the nurse what's today's temperature.
Lam uses an emergency healthcare hotline run by a charity organization.
We get around 3,200 to 3,400 calls per day. The number of calls would increase by 10 to 15% during adverse weather conditions.
A recent study shows hotline calls peak when temperatures reach 28 to 32 degrees Celsius. 49% are for dizziness, shortness of breath, and general pain, mostly from women aged 75.
There will only be more and more hospital admission and help-seeking behavior with climate change.
Professor Emily Chan of Chinese University is the study's author.
If the daily temperature on average reaches the 29 degrees Celsius, then I guess the hospital system, our frontline service, social medical service, should start to prepare that they should expect more people will call for help.
To adapt to global warming, the hotline center increases manpower by 10 to 15% during hot spells. It's introduced as well this gadget that measures the elderly's blood pressure and automatically uploads it to the call center via internet every time they use the device.
During hot summer or even during cold spell, the blood pressure level of the elderly would either increase sharply or drop. If the readings exceeded the normal threshold, our in-house nurses will contact our service users to make sure that they are in good condition.
Next, after the break, living and dying in the age of global warming.
Which species can cope and which ones can't cope?
Who is going to be the winner? Who is going to be the loser?
Stay with us.